So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Today's webinar focuses on heritage buildings and net zero and the skills opportunity that's available through green skills and heritage apprenticeships. So I'm joined by Historic England today, which is really exciting. I've been working with them quite closely on what standards they've been involved with and what's currently available. And my name is Emma McWalter. I'm a senior program manager from Workwhile, and I've been leading on the Crown Estate project, which is the CREATE program. And the CREATE program is all about green and heritage skills specifically, but also just creating as many high quality apprenticeships as possible within the Crown Estate supply chain. So I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the session today. But yeah, some familiar names I can see from that work in the chat already, which is great. So briefly, what we will talk through today, it's a 45-minute session, and we do encourage you to be interactive. So there's not huge amounts of us on the call today. So if you do want to put your hand up, or we'll come to questions at the end as well, do feel free. We do want to make sure that this feels tailored to you in terms of our follow-up and what we can help with following today. So yeah, the chat box is open, so is the Q&A. And then we'll have some time at the end for people to pop their cameras and mics on as well if they wish. So I'll talk briefly about who Workwhile are. I think some on the call might be familiar with us already, but I will quickly run through that. A bit of background to the CREATE programme now that we are about a year into that. So where we've got to as well, focusing right back on just the kind of key benefits to apprenticeships in general. So for businesses, but also for social mobility and for the wider sector. And then we're going to look at the heritage and carbon report, just some key findings from that, which are basically the basis of this programme and also quite a lot of the work that Historic England has been doing and what we can take from that. If you are a Crown Estate supply chain organisation, I'm going to talk you through the full employer journey that you can access through the CREATE programme with Workwhile, but don't worry, if you're not a Crown Estate supply chain organisation, you can still work with Workwhile and Historic England. We will talk you through the different options for that later on. And then we're going to look at green apprenticeships and also heritage standards more specifically, so a bit of a deeper dive into some of those standards, including a new one, which is a level 5 historic construction specialist. So that one is quite interesting, and I'll get Ellie to speak more to that as we go through, but a chance to be the first cohort of its kind there. And then a little bit more about impact we've had so far and some important government updates about policy change under Labour for apprenticeships and what that might mean as well. So to quickly introduce Workwhile, we are an independent charity organisation. We started back in 2020 under the name LPC, London Progression Collaboration, which was actually created off the back of research done by IPPR. Sorry for all the acronyms, but that's Institute for Public Policy Research. So we came as a direct result of research done into the world of work, and particularly the apprenticeship levy and the effect it was having on the wider economy. And so instead of just writing a report and getting people to publish it and then trying to get into the kind of news headlines, the think tank put together an actual team of people to do the do and walk the walk of those recommendations. So we are a support hub for all SMEs in London. So any SME that's interested in finding out more about apprenticeships can talk to us about it, and we can guide them through the process. We're also a levy transfer hub. So we've been providing levy transfer from large organisations with unspent funds to smaller ones since we kicked off back in 2020. So we've supported over 2,000 apprenticeship starts through the levy transfer, as well as through our other services, which I can talk about a little bit more later on. In terms of apprenticeships, just going back to the basics of why it is that we focus on apprenticeships when it comes to creating a fairer world of work, but also benefiting the economy. There are large amounts of benefits to having apprenticeships in your business, which I'm sure many on the call already kind of converted to already. But in terms of offering promotional opportunities to current staff that want to upskill in slightly different areas. It works really well for upskilling people you've already got in your organisation, as well as it working really well for new hires, and getting more diversity into the business, getting more young people into the business. Particularly those entry-level apprenticeships are really key, not just for the apprentice themselves, but also for getting people to join your organisation that want to stay and really want to give back to the employer that's given them the opportunity to develop their skills. So you also always get industry-led knowledge, so it's always up to date. All apprenticeship standards are revised roughly every 3 years. So the training that is delivered through training providers and apprenticeships is always going to be relevant, in a way that actually like university and maybe some other courses aren't necessarily, and it to be employer-led. So employers are really at the heart of what makes up those standards, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on as well. And then just looking even kind of broader to that, to like the wider society around apprenticeships and why we think they're key for social mobility specifically. So again, you've probably seen a lot of these kind of updates in the news, but there is a big shift kind of away from people necessarily always going to university, which was like a big push for previous governments, and it's now we're looking at more vocational options and getting people into work, and more financially stable quicker. So it's a really growing in popularity option for young people, particularly with it being available via UCAS as well now, which was a big update about a year ago, and really just promoting that debt-free progression, and also tackling unintentional kind of preferences that to get things to people that have certain privileges. So things like unpaid internships, even volunteering, like can only really be accessed by certain types of people with certain backgrounds. So apprenticeships are really key for people who need to be able to fund their own way, live independently, be able to work but also learn at the same time. So a little bit of background to the CREATE programme with the Crown Estate specifically. So this is a specific project that the Crown has funded Workwhile to deliver. So the main objective is to help more disadvantaged and marginalised groups into good quality apprenticeships across the Crown Estate supply chain. So currently this work focuses on their London sites, London redevelopment sites that are working towards making these buildings net zero. So it's really exciting in terms of basically being almost all listed buildings. So the heritage element is there throughout, but also the fact that we are greening these buildings and making sure that their build, makeup, energy use is all focused towards net zero as well. So it's a really pioneering project by the Crown Estate, and it's really exciting to work on that and to be able to create opportunities for young people to enter that sector as it's growing in popularity as well. So through this, we are gaining knowledge of the sector as a whole, but really providing that support to all of the subcontractors that are working across those various sites in London. And we're really hoping that we could take this potentially outside of London in the future, but also just using it as a blueprint perhaps for other organisations similar to the Crown, like developers and landowners, in order to make sure that we're not just following Section 106 requirements, that we're going above and beyond to make sure that these construction sites are offering opportunities to young people and local people who are kind of furthest from the job market. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail when we come to talking about heritage skills more specifically, but just wanted to share. So the background to this project really is this heritage and carbon report. That's where all this work is coming from, and you can see all of the organisations there in the top right corner that were involved in this research, which is really, really crucial. So some of the key findings from this that stood out to me the most were over 200,000 new workers are needed. So this is literally just about historic buildings and retrofit. So that's what we're going to need every single year until we get to 2050 to actually meet our net zero target specifically for historic buildings. 75% of contractors haven't actually done any training for buildings that are pre-1919 in terms of their build in the past 4 to 5 years. So there's a real push here that we need to get that knowledge and those skills up to date with what's required. And then there's that money, so 35 billion that is potential output generated from this work. So I just wanted to compare that as well to apprenticeship levy funds. I'm sure lots of people on the call have their own apprenticeship levy and are spending it, which is fantastic. But no matter how hard we try, there always seems to be unused levy funds that are given back to the Treasury. So I just wanted to highlight that last financial year, there was still about 60 million unused funds. So we want to think about how we can make sure we are taking that government money and really putting it towards these skills gaps and having impact in the sector in that way. So a little bit more about as a subcontractor to the Crown, what you can benefit from this programme. So we deliver one-to-one tailored advice and support. So that's everything from businesses that have never had an apprentice before, need to find out about everything from day one, like how it all works logistically, what standards are right for them, what training providers they have locally or what training providers offer that standard, working through that full process, making introductions, organising meetings. We're there really to handhold through that entire process. For some that are a little bit further along, like have apprentices in their business already, but might be interested in other standards or getting like more support with the recruitment side to get better candidates, we help with that as well. So I can help with the job descriptions. There's recruitment support I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the next slide. And then we do all the kind of logistical stuff as well. So we provide levy transfer for businesses that would normally be co-investing. So if you are an SME and you don't pay into the levy, there would normally be a cost associated with hiring an apprentice that's 22 or above in age, but we can get that fully covered. So it really overcomes that barrier. And then we also support with the digital apprenticeship service account and all of its weird intricacies. We're quite well versed in helping people through that process. We also provide line management training, which is something that we've been delivering and developing and improving over the past 2 years. So we've supported over 100 managers on this already. Our course is called Develop Mentor, and it focuses on key line management skills for those managing young people, and particularly those in apprenticeship roles. So yeah, could also be people who are doing an apprenticeship to upskill or changing sector. But we are delivering training about how to best support those individuals through engagement and motivation and key strategies for kind of personal development throughout, just to try and increase that retention. And then we also are about good work as a charity, not just apprenticeships. So we've developed a consultation meeting that looks at 4 key areas of good work: fair pay, diversity and inclusion, health and well-being, and skills and progression. And we have a checklist that we run through and ask questions about that and provides further information and a tailored report with things you can easily act on. So it's all designed to be very practical and not lost in the bureaucracy as things sometimes can be. So quick fixes and practical changes you can make to improve on each of those areas. So in terms of the recruitment support, this has been a really exciting part of this project so far that I've really enjoyed. So whenever we do have vacancies that are coming through the supply chain, we've got a vast list of places that we can share them. So some of these are Crown Estate charity partners. So Under One Sky, Breaking Barriers. So Under One Sky supports homeless people. Breaking Barriers supports refugees into work, and Drive Forward Foundation is about supporting those with a care background into work. So those we share all vacancies with to see if they've got candidates to refer to us. We're also working with Westminster Council, although with quite often with the Crown Estate sites there isn't a strict Section 106 policy about the borough of residence of those apprentices. We do still want them to be local where we can, so we are sharing with Westminster. And then a few more on there are actually other charities and web pages that are free to advertise vacancies, specifically around green jobs, but Youth Build as well, really great charity that we're working with that can offer like on-site visits and run their own pre-employment programs for young people interested in joining the construction sector. So they're already kind of keen and ready to work, which is a real benefit as well. I'm going to briefly skim over some financial support. So again, if you want to find out any more about this, please do just get in touch with us. There are various CITB grants that employers can access, particularly to do with apprenticeships in construction. And then there are other incentives. So there is still £1,000 incentive in payment for any 16 to 18-year-old apprentices. And this does also go up to age 24 if they've got an education and healthcare plan, or if they've been in the care of their local authority previously. With young apprentices, one to mention that actually doesn't, I think, get mentioned quite enough is the national insurance contributions. As we know, that's all gone up recently. So that is actually not something you need to consider for apprentices that are aged 25 or under. And then there's also the levy funds available for those apprentices between 16 and 21 that I mentioned earlier. In terms of how we are getting on so far with the Create programme, just wanted to share some figures with you because I thought, why not? We're about a year into the programme and yeah, we're doing quite well in terms of number of businesses that are engaged. So I work with the tier ones at all these different sites, and then they introduce me to the subcontractors to provide the support and create those vacancies. So some highlights is that we've had 6 vacancies that we've supported with recruitment from those organisations I mentioned before. I've got 19 subcontractors that I'm already working with that are engaged in the programme, and we've had 4 apprentices actually officially start, and actually quite a lot more in the pipeline. So there's quite a few that are planned for September or November as well, just based on when the college starts those courses. And what you will see in the corner is that we want to get more dark green apprenticeships, which we haven't had any of so far. But there is a difference between mid-green and dark green, and it's all a bit subjective to each person. But I've gone with like the iFate categorization of that. So we have had some mid-green apprentices, but we'd really like to see some dark green ones coming through, which I'll highlight later on. And then I just wanted to share as well the different sites that we've worked with so far. So this will be expanding and changing as sites come on board, as some go into demolition or some start with their actual work. And then it obviously depends on the work that's going on, how many subcontractors are involved, but that's roughly how many we've got from each of those sites so far. So to focus a little bit more on green apprenticeships, and then I'm going to pass over to Ellie from Historic England to talk more about the heritage ones specifically. I'm not going to talk through all of them on this slide. I just really wanted to bring these up to show you the range of what's out there. So currently available through, I keep saying iFate, it's actually Skills England now, so I should correct myself for that. That was changed the website a couple of weeks ago. So if you go on the Skills England website, you can see the full list of everything that's currently available. Some that are dark green and have the coronation emblem. So the King gave them a award for being dark green apprenticeship. So we've got the electrician. So it's actually the standard sort of electrician qualification, the level 3 is a dark green apprenticeship. We've also got the level 4 corporate responsibility and sustainability practitioner, which is essentially a social value and ESG focused apprenticeship. So it's kind of self-fulfilling in that way. And then there's also the level 7 sustainability specialist. So level 7s are actually currently only available between now and January next year in terms of apprenticeship levy funds being allocated to them. So if you're interested in any of those, and you can see there's a bit more on the other side there that are off-site roles, so things like architect, level 7 qualification, there's chartered surveying, quantity surveying and town planning at level 7. So if you are interested in those, now is the time to move. But also just wanted to highlight there's quite a lot of what we call mid-green apprenticeships, so a lot of the traditional trades. We've supported some demolition operatives already as part of this programme, things like stonemasonry, a bit more heritage, but also green, and then also looking at like site supervisor, the quantity surveying qualifications at different levels come into this as well, just as obviously construction needs to have net zero in mind now, so it's being written into those standards. And although it might not be a very obviously green job title, there are still elements in there that are important. So to quickly touch on the level 4 CSR apprenticeship, just wanted to share a bit more about this. So it's really about getting down into those policies, actually creating sustainability policies and social value projects within an organization. And yeah, working with an ESG team, or they can also be solo, just they need someone to supervise them in that role. And I think it's one that will be quite popular with young people that have these interests. And then I also wanted to highlight the low carbon heating technician one, which I think will have quite a lot of incentives and a push coming soon from the government. So this is all about heat pumps and installing heat pumps and solar thermal collectors. So obviously that's going to be a big focus for housing that already exists, but also new housing that's being built. I also had our chair of trustees was part of the trailblazer for the level 4 corporate responsibility and sustainability practitioner. So I really wanted to, I asked him for some stats about that and how it was going. And you can see there that kind of proof is in the pudding really about how many apprentices we've got already on that standard, quite a few that have completed already, and then the number of employers across the country that are engaging in it. So that's quite enough from me, and we're going to focus on heritage apprenticeships now. And it's a delight to be able to introduce Ellie Davis, who's Heritage Apprenticeships and Qualifications Adviser at Historic England, who is going to run you through a little bit more about their work on these apprenticeships and what's available. Thanks, Ellie. I'll let you introduce yourself a bit more.
Great, thank you. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah,
Sorry, if everyone, just one second. Hopefully you can all see that. Does that look like it should? Okay, great. So yeah, thank you for the introduction, Emma. So yeah, I'm Ellie. I work in Historic England's team that looks at the sector workforce and resilience, and we do a lot of work around apprenticeships as well as other training and skills initiatives. My main focus today, because of the relevance to yourselves, is the Heritage Construction Specialist Level 5 apprenticeship. So to start off, I think I should probably tell you who we are. So Historic England is England's, sorry, I'm just trying to move my screens around because I've so I can see you, is England's public body for heritage. So, you know, our historic places and spaces, very important to all of us. And so at Historic England, we work with people across the country to discover, protect, and bring new life to our shared historic environment. And we do this in a variety of ways, from managing the NHLE, which is the National Heritage List for England. So that's a list of over 400,000 assets, ranging from prehistoric monuments, buildings, battlefields, shipwrecks, parks and gardens, and they benefit from legal protection as recommended by Historic England. And we manage that list and make it available to everyone through our website. We're a statutory consultee in the planning system for proposals for change that impact the historic environment. We provide advice and guidance for those whose decision making impacts the historic environment. So that's everyone from local authorities, policymakers, homeowners, asset owners, estate managers, construction professionals, construction trades, etc. We have large grant funding programs, we have education and engagement programs, cultural programs, and we have an incredible resource in our archive. But we also, and what I'm here to talk to you today, we look at, we try to build a resilient heritage sector workforce, and that ranges from archaeologists and conservation officers, but also the construction industry, without whom we can't repair, maintain, and adapt our historic buildings. So we do that work in a huge variety of ways. Policy work, we deliver training and other programs, but one way we do that is through chairing the Historic Environment Trailblazer. And for those of you who aren't aware, a trailblazer is a group of industry representatives and employers who develop and maintain apprenticeship standards. So we consult on lots of other trailblazer groups, apprenticeships where they have great relevance for our sector, but we also look after a suite of 7 apprenticeships across our sort of what we would consider subsectors of the historic environment sector. So archaeology, historic environment management, conservation, specifically objects and collections, and then heritage construction. And that group changes to reflect the subsector. So for the heritage construction specialist, This is the group. Some, I think Adrian from DBR is in the room today. Hello. But these are the sorts of representatives we had on that Trailblazer group. So it's a variety of asset or portfolio owners, those invested in heritage skills, heritage policy, training providers, and most importantly, contractors who work in heritage construction to represent employer and industry need for the development of the standard. So just to give some background to the standard and to its development and how it came about. So essentially, it's one of many actions we're taking to respond to known skill shortages and gaps to repair, maintain and retrofit historic buildings. And I just wanted to clarify what buildings we mean, because I think there's quite often a misconception when we talk about heritage that we're talking about palaces and we're talking about castles, but we're talking about a huge range of structures. And not just buildings that are protected in some way, so not just buildings that are on the local or national heritage lists. We're talking about traditional construction because of its performance differences to modern construction, which is the focus of most construction apprenticeships and qualifications that are available. So typically we talk about pre-1919 because this is roughly when building practices started to change, though it's not a firm cut-off by any means. And that accounts for about 20% of homes and about a third of non-domestic buildings in the whole of England that were built pre-1919. So as I said, many of these are protected through legislation, national or local levels, but many, many more are not. And all of them contribute to our historic environment, our sense of place, our heritage, and they need the right interventions for their construction type. And that's where we're finding these skills gaps. So in terms of evidence for the skills gaps, well, what do we know about that? So we had landmark research all the way back in 2013, published by Historic England, CITB, and with other parties. And then since then, I've had lots of anecdotal evidence to illustrate that there are skills issues. And then that's led to the development of the standard in 2023, 2024. But rather than go back into the annals of time and tell you about that, I'm going to tell you about our more recent skills needs analysis that has essentially confirmed what we already knew in the picture of that landscape. So the skills needs analysis, and I'll put some links in the chat, by the way, when I'm done. So the skills needs analysis for the repair, maintenance and retrofit of traditional pre-1919 buildings was published in autumn 2024, and it told us that there is a large market for work on pre-1919 buildings. I just told you how the sort of percentage of our stock that they take up, so there is a large market. There's a well-established workforce of specialist firms and contractors, and they are reporting a growth in demand for their work and their specialisms. However, nearly a fifth of that workforce is reporting skills gaps, which is where there are existing employees lacking the skills needed, as well as skills shortages, which is where a quarter of them are reporting shortages, which is where they're having difficulty to recruit with the skills that are needed. And we also know that there's a bias in this workforce towards older workers. So there's huge concerns for its sustainability and sort of succession planning. There's evidence that the existing workforce is not meeting the need for work on traditional buildings and that there are backlogs for RMI work. Approximately a third of pre-1919 buildings fail to meet decent home standards, compared to only 11% of houses of buildings built after 1920. In the context of what we expect to increase demand, for example, we know that we are anticipating increasing demand because of retrofit. This picture becomes all the more worrying, and only 28% of respondents to the skills needs analysis are confident in the existing training provision and landscape for retrofit skills and developing those skills amongst their workforce, but also in building the workforce. And Emma touched on another report. So the skills needs analysis focused on that specialist workforce. And Emma touched on the heritage and carbon addressing the skills gap report, which puts the scale of the issues into a net zero context. And essentially, we need to more than double the workforce to be able to meet our net zero targets to retrofit our existing historic buildings. And that means a huge influx of new workers, both new to construction, but also construction who are going to be new to historic buildings work. The report also looked at the breakdown of workers by measures, required by trade skills, and also regional analysis. So I'll put some more links in the chat there because it's a really interesting report. It's very clear that we need to be able to grow the workforce to work on these buildings. And we know also that the majority of the existing training provision and therefore skills of the wider construction workforce are focused on modern construction types. So it's just not adequate to meet what we need to do to make our historic buildings resilient. So the standard aims to provide a training route to develop these skills and knowledge within the construction workforce. So this is part of wider work. We're not expecting this apprenticeship to solve all of our skills issues on its own, but it's a really crucial part to provide a new training route. So let me tell you a little bit about the standard. So in terms of an overview, the purpose of the occupation is to ensure the repair and maintenance of heritage buildings through construction projects that repair, restore, adapt, alter, or retrofit historic buildings and heritage assets. And it combines practical construction skills with specialist heritage knowledge to inform interventions and works. So I've kind of I've looked through the standard that and tried to categorize it in a way that makes it a little bit easier to look through, because you may all know apprenticeship standards are not always the easiest documents to go through. So there's the traditional construction element in terms of technical knowledge and training. So understanding the performance differences of traditional construction to modern construction. They perform very differently in terms of management of moisture and heat, and also use often very different materials. So looking at the materials and their performance characteristics, materials that are appropriate to use, and the interactions of existing fabric and new interventions. Looking at condition and principles of repair and maintenance, which are absolutely crucial to good energy efficiency. And so with that, the appropriateness of energy efficiency measures and interventions, and all risks that are associated with interventions to building fabric. There's then the sort of heritage matters category of learning outcomes here and skills outcomes. So significance, which essentially underpins it all in the heritage sector, and it tells us what's important about a building, and that is often derived from building fabric. It's about the principles and ethics of conservation, and they provide a guiding framework for the management of change in the historic environment. The regulatory framework, the legislation that essentially regulates how work is done in the historic environment, for example, heritage protections and the associated permissions for those. Guidance and standards of practice within historic environment work, heritage assessments such as impact assessments, that informs iterative design of interventions. And then that wider understanding and appreciation of heritage and how every building, whether it's protected by legislation or not, can contribute to a sense of place and can carry meaning for the communities that use them. And then specialist advice is my last sort of bucket, because it's like I said, heritage construction specialist. This role is expected to be able to give advice to a range of stakeholders, to make decisions, to make work plans, but also to oversee them. Documentation, project documentation, record keeping, costing, contracting, staff oversight and management, and really crucially also understanding what other expertise are required, especially in a historic environment context. So that's like a brief foray through the standard itself. Just to note the pathway through, so there are no specific entry requirements for this apprenticeship, but it is a level 5, so it's a higher apprenticeship. It means that it's really designed for people who have prior knowledge and experience in construction, and so it's going to upskill the construction workforce to be able to undertake more complex work and develop and be able to work on these sorts of buildings. So it could be that they have a prior trade and want to develop higher skills or specialism, or it could be that it's someone with experience of design or construction design and build management. So several routes in. It's not trade specific, so it's a multidisciplinary apprenticeship, and therefore is really has a wide scope of relevance to build multidisciplinary teams and provide those high level skills to various people. But obviously, to note on prior knowledge, while some prior experience and competency is required to take on this level 5, funding eligibility rules apply as per all other apprenticeships, so it needs to be new learning for the person that's undertaking it. And they also need to be able to obviously fulfill the KSBs in their workplace. So this is why we think the Crown Estates London projects would really suit, as these are working on traditional and listed buildings, but also lots of other applications. Just to whiz through quickly the programme, it's a at the moment it's designed on the standard as a typical 24 months on programme, though of course the reality could be different depending on training design. And through that time, they also develop a portfolio of evidence to support their endpoint assessment. The endpoint assessment period is approximately 5 months because it has a technical project, which needs to be a real piece of work, delivers adaptation or conservation, repair or maintenance of a heritage asset. And then they have an interview underpinned by that portfolio of evidence developed throughout the programme. So where are we with this, and where does this leave us? So essentially, we are in the process now. The apprenticeship was approved for delivery about a year ago, and we are in the process of getting a cohort and a programme up and running. So we're in discussion with a couple of potential providers who are in the midst of developing training plans and potential delivery models. We have an endpoint assessment organisation who is currently going through the approval process to add this standard to their suite of standards that they assess. And this is where we're talking to you, because this is where the employers sort of complete the triangle, because we're trying to raise awareness of the standard in the construction industry and gather interest to show demand. We know that there's a need for it, and we know that there's demand because that's how we managed to develop it, but we now need to show that, convert that interest into true interest and true buy-in, so that we can get those training providers over the line. So that's why I'm talking to you today. Before I just wrap up, because I'm sorry, I've probably run over, I just want to quickly say that we do look after, as I said, other apprenticeships. The most relevant one probably to this audience is the Historic Environment Advice Assistant Level 4 apprenticeship. This is more in the historic environment management, managing change, so roles might be junior heritage consultants, development advice consultants or assistants, and advisors. So that's another apprenticeship standard just to make you aware of in the suite of ones we look after. And yeah, but then that's I think that's everything from me. So just wanted to say thank you very much for having me. I'll pass back to Emma, and then really happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That's really, really helpful to have that overview of all the apprenticeships that you've worked on. But yeah, just to focus in on that level 5, like, please do, we really want your feedback on that. So part of the reason why we're doing this webinar, apart from all the other good reasons we've talked about already, is that we do really want to gather employer demand for that standard specifically, so that we can go to training providers. Obviously, they are commercial organisations. They need to make sure that they've got enough people on the cohort to be able to deliver it. So really keen to see what we can do to help nudge them in the right direction and get that all working well. So I'm just going to pop back into my slides here. So I know we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm really going to whiz through these just so that we have got time for people to ask their questions if they need to. So just wanted to show some other partnership work that's been happening throughout this project. So just recently, some nice impact we've had through some vacancies. So bricklaying vacancy, we've had 3 interviewees for that, and actually 2 being from Drive Forward Foundation, which are helping people from care backgrounds into work, and then one's from Job Centre Plus. So I'm just finding out exactly who's been given that role, but really showing that we're getting to those people where we can have most impact. And I've also been encouraging collaboration with the charity partners in other ways with the subcontractors. So KPH recently started working more closely with Youth Build, offering on-site visits, looking at potential direct recruitment into their level 2 apprenticeships for this year. And then also just really wanted to quickly mention that Workwhile is also working on another project outside of the Crown Estate, but does kind of link in. That is all about supporting refugee and asylum seeker women into work. So we have a cohort of really highly skilled, very experienced refugee women who are looking for work. And so any roles that might suit them, that's a candidate pool you can access straight away, that have been through a pre-employment program with an organisation called Roots Collective. We've also got quickly the changes that are happening government-wise. So the removal of English and maths as a requirement to pass Gateway. Lots of employers are opting to kind of keep this in, and apprentices are opting to keep their English and maths and functional skills if they want to. But if it's really irrelevant or it's a real barrier, then you can remove it, which I think is really good news. We've got level 2 foundation apprenticeships happening from August this year, 3 of those specifically in construction. If you want to find out any more about particularly what's on this slide, do get in touch with me and I can help with that. And as I mentioned before, there's defunding of level 7s happening from January. So again, if you want to jump on a level 7, now is the time to do that. So yeah, just wanted to, sorry, I know we've only got a couple of minutes now, but if there are any questions from anyone or anyone just wanted to share a bit about your experience of any of those standards or green skills requirements in general, do let us know. I know there's been quite a lot of activity in the chat, but if anyone wants to come on, do feel free.
Just to say, there's some nice comments in the chat, and I thought if I just also I'll drop my email as well in the chat for anyone that might need it to speak specifically around heritage. And also wanted to just say for the questions around the green skills and all the flagging, one thing I've also noticed at the moment is where the iFate website has been updated to reflect the Skills England change. Some pages of really crucial information seem to have been lost and links broken. So I just was trying to find a couple of links to help, and unfortunately they seem to have disappeared. So I think that information might be back out. Yeah, just to make people aware.
So yeah, so obviously the iFate page, like if you use the usual links that you normally use, it should redirect you, but it's a new web page, so there might be some issues there, which is good to be aware of. But yeah, if you do want to get in touch with us, really big thank you to Ellie for joining us and sharing more about the great work that you do at Historic England. That's really, really helpful. And then anyone within the Crown Estate supply chain, please contact me directly. I can literally kick off like meetings or any kind of support from now, whenever you need it for any type of apprenticeship, not just green and heritage ones. And then if you're an organisation doing work outside of the Crown Estate, please do contact Workwhile either way, because we do support with all types of apprenticeships across London. So we are still that hub, and we still have our core funding, which means that we can support any construction apprentice across London outside of this project as well as within it. Excellent. So I can see there's some typing in the chat, so I might just...
Oh no, I was going to say the same thing. Did you want to unmute and just say what your type, unless it was obviously something you don't want to?
Excellent.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, fantastic.
Great. And yeah, I know there's people on the call that I'm already in contact with and doing great work with. So thanks very much for that. And just want to say thank you all for joining. We will have a recording of this session. So if there are colleagues or anyone in your network that you think would benefit from this information, you can share that on and we'll email that round to you shortly. And hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you, Ellie. And thanks everyone for joining.
Having me.